Hi, I'm Scott Crevier. I'm an alderman representing District 3 on the De Pere City Council. And today I want to talk to you about a wheel tax that is in our 2018 budget. First of all, let me just tell you, I've got some notes and some bullet points on a computer monitor behind the camera here. So I apologize if there's a little bit of a glare in my glasses. But I've got some bullet points I want to make sure that I go through and not miss anything. First of all, what's a wheel tax? Well, the state of Wisconsin actually calls it a local vehicle registration fee. And that's probably more accurate. Wheel tax is just easier to say. It has nothing to do with the number of wheels or anything like that. What it basically is the state of Wisconsin allows a local municipality to charge a vehicle registration fee. And that money comes right into the city or into the village or wherever you happen to live. And then the city is limited on what we can use that money for. So our 2018 budget has that provision in there that we would charge an annual fee of $20 per vehicle. That idea has garnered much attention, I suppose, in recent days. We passed our 2018 budget at our last city council meeting, and we still have a few steps to go before the wheel tax becomes a for sure thing. But I want to at least make sure you know what exactly it is, how we would use the money, and how I feel about it. First, let me just say I'm in my third term right now on the city council, and we've talked about a wheel tax in the past, and I've always been against it. I felt that it was additional money that I'd be paying out of my pocket, and it just goes into the city budget, and I have no idea where it's going. It's just adding on, and I would instead prefer to just pay taxes, increase property taxes appropriately, if they need more money. This year, for the first time, I'm in favor of this wheel tax for a number of reasons. So I'm just going to kind of go down some of my thoughts on it. I'm also going to address a few of the comments and questions that have been asked of me in some emails, and also talk about where exactly this money is going to go. So the tax would be $20 per vehicle per year, and that money would basically go to two things. First of all, it would go to maintaining and repairing sidewalks throughout the city. And then secondly, money would also go to paying for street construction projects. So first, let's talk about sidewalks. We not only need sidewalks in De Pere, but we also need safe sidewalks. Many of us in De Pere feel that we want to have a good, walkable city. We want it to be safe. We don't want people to have trouble when they're using our sidewalks. So our current program basically splits up the city into 8 different sections. And each year, public works staff visits one of those 8 sections. So they kind of do the rounds throughout those areas each year. And they look at all of the sidewalks in the city. If there are problems with a sidewalk, they mark it with spray paint and then send a notice to the property owner. So one of the most common problems is that there are 2 sidewalk slabs that don't quite line up anymore. One has sunk perhaps, or maybe there's a tree that has caused, the roots have caused it to raise. But basically, sidewalks don't line up anymore, and they're unsafe. Obviously, people walking can trip over them. It makes it harder to shovel the snow off of those sidewalks, which therefore makes them even more unsafe. So the process today is that when the city public works staff sees that there is that problem with a sidewalk, they mark it, they send a letter to the property owner, and then the property owner is required to do the repair. So the property owner can hire any company they want, and they come out, do the repair. One of the common things, for example, is to pump sand, for example, underneath a slab to raise a slab, and that makes it then more level. But nonetheless, however it's repaired, sometimes you have to actually bust up a slab and replace it with brand new poured concrete. But however it's done, property owners are required to make those repairs. And since it's split up into 8 sections, basically me, as a property owner, the sidewalk in front of my house is inspected once every 8 years. Now, that process by the Public Works Department is a little bit more complicated than that, because once they send out those notices, some property owners do the repairs right away and some don't. So the Public Works staff will come back around at a later date and re-inspect to make sure that the repairs have happened. And if they don't, there's a back and forth communication going on with the property owner to make sure it gets repaired. And ultimately, if the property owner is not taking care of that repair, well, then the city will take care of the repair and then bill the property owner by adding it onto property taxes at the end of the year. So that process of actually collecting the money and getting the repair done can actually be a long time, during which the sidewalk is not safe. There's a lot of headaches for the public works staff to have to go through all that. Having this wheel tax put money into these repairs would change that process significantly, in that public works staff would still visit 1/8 of the city, and when they mark a sidewalk as needing repair, instead of sending a notice to the property owner, the Public Works Department would basically just take care of the repair. We would probably contract with a company to do that, but we would basically take care of the repair, take care of it right away in a timely manner, and it's fixed and done, and it's paid for with money from this wheel tax. That specific reason is the biggest reason why I like doing it this way. The money, I'm actually paying for this, for my sidewalks already. So what this is doing is, as a property owner, it takes the requirement for me to have to pay for that and kind of shifts it so that now I'm paying a vehicle registration fee instead of paying for my sidewalks. So that's basically it, how my view of how the sidewalks work. It does give us really good and much safer sidewalks. It makes the process simpler for city public works staff, and that's one of the major reasons that I like it. There are other communities who are talking about wheel taxes. I know that there are people who are a little concerned because they don't know where the money is going, or the money just kind of goes into the coffers of the city and it kind of disappears, and it just seems like an additional tax. Well, this one has very specific purposes, which is why I'm in favor of it this year for the first time. So let me address a couple of other issues and some things that have been raised with me in emails mostly. Some have said that they don't think it's fair because some of the major users of our roads won't be paying this wheel tax. And they're mostly correct in that assessment. So as an example, every one of us who has a car and keeps that car in De Pere will have to pay $20 a year for that car, that on top of our current registration fee. The $20 just goes to the city. But there are a lot of companies, like companies with big trucks, companies with delivery trucks like UPS and FedEx. They don't keep their trucks in the city, and they use our city streets, but they won't have to pay. And that's absolutely true. They won't. The best response I can give to that is there are a lot of people who come in and use our city services who don't pay for our city services. Anybody who drives through our city doesn't pay for our city services. People who work in our city but live somewhere else, maybe they kind of indirectly pay because their employer is paying for things like property taxes and such. But those people personally are not paying for city services. There are also people from outside our community that use, public services like parks. They come into Voyager Park, which we're very proud of, a really cool park downtown right on the river. There's a lot of city services that people use that are just paid for by us property owners. So that's my best response. If you think that it's not fair, I guess that's your prerogative. But it is true that those companies will not have to pay this fee. Another email that I got said that it seems like the Public Works Director is just trying to sneak something through, and it's just another tax on top of everything else. Well, as I said earlier, this is not just a brand new tax where the money just goes into the coffers and disappears. The tax amounts, and I'm going to go into some of the finances here, specific numbers here in a minute, but the tax is being designated to pay for two specific things. One is sidewalk repairs and maintenance, and two is street construction projects. So, yeah, the Public Works Director is trying to balance his budget. I don't fault him for trying to do that. I think it's a very valid thing for him to do, and this is just another way for us to pay for city services. So overall, it's just contributing to a large tax base that pays for everything that the city does. Another comment that I got, sorry, I'm just looking at a couple more notes here. One of the other things I just wanted to point out too is that, you might not know many of our city employees, but I'll just tell you, they're definitely some fantastic people that love De Pere just as much as any of us. And the department heads have some significant responsibilities. They're required to balance their budget every year, and we also ask them every year to come up with creative ways to create revenue to maintain or improve city services. So this is why, for example, sometimes the fees for park programs have to increase, because our parks director wants to make sure that we're maintaining these services and that the quality is not going down. And sometimes that's just part of doing business, is that we have to increase fees. So that's just a fact, part of having to balance a municipal budget. One of the comments that I saw too, and this was actually mentioned at our city council meeting when we were discussing the 2018 budget, is that this kind of a tax or this kind of a fee affects poor people worse than others who can afford it. I think one alderperson called it regressive. I don't necessarily agree with I don't necessarily disagree with the merits of that statement, but let me talk about that just a little bit. There are fees and costs of living that do affect poorer people worse than other people who can afford it. Yes, everybody who keeps a car in De Pere is going to have to come up with another $20 per year for that car. But that's how taxes and user fees work. Even the current vehicle registration fee that we send to the state every year, that affects poorer people harder than it does people who can afford it. So when you own a home, when you own a vehicle, there are costs involved. So the fact that it's harder on people who can't afford it, I think that's not a good reason to not do it. I definitely think it's important for us to think about that, though, and consider it. And the bottom line for me is I look at it and I think of all the costs involved in owning a vehicle. I don't think it's too much to ask to come up with an additional $20 per year. Yes, I know there are people who are going to have a tough time coming up with that, but it's fair because that's what everyone will pay. It's just the same that we all pay the same for a gallon of gas. We all pay the same for a set of tires. So when it comes to the costs of licensing our vehicles, it's fair for everyone. A couple of other comments that I had mentioned other cities. One said that only a few other cities in the state have done this. Another said that, well, just because Green Bay is considering it doesn't mean we have to do it. So let me just talk a little bit about other cities. First and foremost, I don't care what Green Bay is doing. I do look at what other municipalities do with respect to different programs, fees, only for the purpose of seeing how well it's going, if it's working, if they're having any problems, that kind of thing, because I want to be prepared for any issues that might come our way. But aside from that, I definitely don't look at other cities, especially Green Bay, and say, hey, just because they're doing it, we should do it. So I just don't buy that. But there are a lot of municipalities in the state of Wisconsin that have a local vehicle registration fee. As an example, both Appleton and Kaukauna have had this wheel tax for a couple of years now. City of Beloit has had one for over 30 years. City of Milwaukee has had a $20 wheel tax for 10 years now, and Milwaukee County just added a $30 wheel tax this year. So actually, if you think about that, if you live in the city of Milwaukee, you got to pay both of those. So you're paying an additional $50 a year for your vehicle. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we should do this because all the other cities are doing it. My point is that this is indeed a valid method for cities to use to fund operating costs. And it's working well for these cities. The state does limit what we're allowed to spend that money on, specifically public works related projects. You could look at the state state code for the exact verbiage, but they've got to be road, sidewalk related projects. So we can't just use it for anything. But there are cities who have a wheel tax. It's not an uncommon thing in the state of Wisconsin, and it is working for others. One of the other concerns that I saw was from folks who said that they don't have a sidewalk, and therefore they should not have to pay for sidewalk maintenance throughout the city. I don't buy that. That's not how city services work. We pay for a lot of things that many residents don't use. Best example I can give you is just from me personally. I don't have any specific need for tennis courts, soccer fields, swimming pools, city buses. There are a lot of things that we do in this city that I just don't have a need for. But not only do I pay for those services through my taxes, I think it's right that I pay for those services. These are the kinds of things that make for an overall good quality of life in the city of De Pere. And therefore, having a good quality of life for everyone benefits us all. So yes, there are always going to be things that we pay for that we have in the city that just don't click with many people. Having a good walking city, good sidewalks everywhere, benefits everyone. There are visitors who are going to come into our city and use our sidewalks. A lot of people use our sidewalks that won't be paying for them, but we have to pay for these and maintain these as a city so that it's available for anyone to use. You know, balancing a municipal budget, it's not easy. One of the major issues I think that any city has with budgets is assessments. There are a couple of kinds of assessments that we've had in De Pere. One is doing road repair. When we come down, for example, a neighborhood road and resurface a road and redo water utilities and sewer and all that, there's an assessment to the property owner to pay for that. Well, I should say there was one. A number of years ago, this was before I was on the council, the city council at the time decided to pay for those types of repairs out of the city budget instead of assessing property owners. Now, that's certainly a valid thing to do. We all still pay for it no matter what. It's just a matter of what's the method of paying for it. And while that's great for us property owners, it does indeed make it a little harder for the department heads of the city to balance their budget. So now the public works director has to figure out, how am I going to pay for all these street repairs? Often we bond for it, we borrow money. But it does make it a little bit harder. I think logistically it makes it simpler. But assessments are never popular. When we're doing some repair work and when a property owner gets a letter in the mail saying, hey, this is the city of De Pere, you have to pay the X amount of dollars for whatever it is, it never seems to come at a good time, and people always complain about assessments. So I like the decision that was made by the city council years ago to take road repairs off of assessments, and this particular project taking sidewalk repairs and maintenance off of assessments, or off of the property owner's shoulders just seems to make sense. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean I'm not paying for my sidewalk repairs anymore. I'm going to be paying the $20 wheel tax. So I'm still paying for money that's going into the pot that pays for all of the sidewalk repairs in the city. But I happen to have two cars, so I'm going to be paying $40 a year more. And that money is going to be used for it instead of me having to come up with money every 8 years to to repair the sidewalks. So generally speaking, I just like the fact that we're moving away from assessments. They're just never popular. So let's go look at the finances and the specifics of the whole thing first of all. The fee itself would be $20 per year per vehicle. So that $20 would show up on your vehicle registration bill every year. You just mail it in with your vehicle registration fee, and then every month the state of Wisconsin will send a check to the city of De Pere for whatever was collected for local vehicle registration fees for that month. Now the state law defines what types of vehicles can be included. You can look that up if you want, but generally speaking it's vehicles under 8,000 pounds, so like typical vehicle, cars and small trucks. It does not affect motorcycles, and it would only be for vehicles within the city limits of De Pere. So if you happen to have a De Pere address, but you live outside of De Pere, like in Lawrence or Hobart or one of our neighboring communities, this does not affect you. Now, since we've never done this, we don't really know, how many vehicles we have in the city right now. Wisconsin DOT data estimates that we have approximately 30,000 vehicles. But we just don't know for sure. So in coming up with these estimates, the Public Works Director used basically 20,000 vehicles as a number in trying to figure out. After we've been doing this for a full year, we'll start getting a really good idea of how many vehicles we have and how much money we can expect to be taking in. But using 20,000 vehicles as an estimate, we figure that in a full year, we'll get about $400,000 of revenue. Now, of that $400,000, $150,000 each year will go to the sidewalk maintenance program. Now, keep in mind, this is just for maintenance. It does not pay for installing brand new sidewalks. Property owners and new construction companies and all that are still responsible for putting in brand new sidewalks. This will only go for the maintenance and repair of sidewalks. So $150,000 of sidewalks. The remaining $250,000 will go directly to street construction projects. So that basically just means we're going to borrow less money to maintain streets and to construct new streets. I've been a property owner here in De Pere now for 20 years, and overall, I'm really concerned about how much money I pay in taxes and fees. But let me just say, too, that I also do expect that my overall out-of-pocket expenses are going to increase. It's just how it works. I mean, another way to look at this is these fees, property taxes, fees that are paid for park services and park programs and such. If you look at it this way, it's all one big pot of money, and our department directors in the city have to figure out how to use that pot of money to pay for all of our expenses. Now, yes, there is money that is specifically designated for certain things, but this is just another kind of way that I look at it from a general standpoint. Running a city is expensive, and we have some awesome employees in this city, and just a simple example, these employees expect to get pay raises every year, and we want to give them pay raises. The cost of health insurance continues to rise. The cost of materials in repairing roads and so forth, the cost of maintaining park equipment, all of these costs continue to rise. So I think it's legitimate to expect our costs to go up each year. Now, the increase in costs can be offset by building new homes, bringing in more homeowners and more property owners and more property taxpayers. So yes, that is one way to kind of offset some increasing costs. But generally speaking, as a property owner, I kind of expect my costs to go up every year. So therefore, I don't mind having a new fee that's going to help pay for things. And let's just be clear about how I view this fee. This is $20 for a vehicle. If you're just doing the math, again, we're kind of talking estimates here, but of that $20, $7.50 is going into the sidewalk repair program. That's already money that I'm paying now for my own sidewalks that I'm no longer going to pay. So I don't really even view that $7.50 as it's the new tax. It's just a shifting of the cost. The remaining money, about $12.50, That's what will go to pay for roads, which will cause us to have to borrow less money every year. With the sidewalks, let me just say one other thing. We need safe sidewalks. A person that I know recently took a digger on one of our sidewalks, and that's not good. He had one of those where the sidewalk wasn't even and just tripped. We need to make sure that our sidewalk slabs are level, which not only makes it easier to walk and run, as I mentioned earlier, it's easier to shovel snow, and overall we have a safer walking environment. So I like the program. I like where this money is going. I hope I've answered a number of questions. As always, I'm interested to hear your feedback. You can visit my website at www.crevier.us, and you can get my email address, my phone number there. Email always seems to be a good way to get a hold of me. A lot of times I work on city issues later at night, and calling people late at night is not usually a good thing. So feel free to email me anytime, and I'm interested in hearing more feedback. So thanks for caring enough to listen. Peace.